I'm going to tell you about a book called Escape Bound. It's a book that I wrote, and it took me 2 years to write it, so I'm incredibly excited to finally see it in print. The subtitle for the book is How Losing a Home Helped Me Find My Heart. Now, you might wonder how losing a home could help a person find their heart. Well, I can tell you it wasn't about the 18,000 miles that we put on my Honda Odyssey minivan pulling a pop-up trailer. And it wasn't even about the 3 months that I got to spend with my 16-year-old daughter, whose desire to become an Instagram travel influencer is what dictated the route, which included 72 points of interest on our map. And finding my heart wasn't even about the trust that we developed, because we really didn't know where we were going to stay from one night to the next, which was kind of akin to jumping out of an airplane without a parachute over and over, just trusting that the universe would find us another safe place to stay. I think what finding my heart was truly about, what it really was about was, I think, validation. So prior to this whole road trip, I really hadn't given a lot of thought to validation. My husband and I had been married for 23 years, and in the early days of our marriage, our validation came from athletic pursuits. We were both into mountain biking, cross-country skiing. We had the ski trips to Vail. We traveled all over the world. We even summited Aconcagua, which is the highest mountain in the Western Hemisphere. It's just under 23,000 feet, so that was a major expedition. Then later, a few years later, we had 3 little kids in 4 years. So our validation came from our little kids, raising 3 little kids and building some successful businesses. And those businesses allowed us to live in homes, luxury homes, and also to spend a month at a time in different beautiful destinations all over the world. So we spent a month in Guatemala, Nicaragua, Colombia, Peru, Mexico, Italy, Thailand. So we were kind of like known as the traveling family. And then when our kids got a little bit older, my validation came from their successes. So my oldest daughter, Gracie, incredibly academically gifted, was this very wise person. You know, rivers run deep. She's into literature and poetry, and also had this deep respect for all things living. And then my son, my youngest, Christopher, was super outgoing, gregarious, right? He's known as being the mayor in our little ski town in Ellicottville, New York, because he just had this magnetic personality. And then you had my middle daughter, Callie, who was like crack cocaine for a helicopter mom. She was an incredibly talented singer. She'd auditioned for America's Got Talent twice by the time she was 15, and she was looking at recording contracts in LA, and had the possibility to travel with or tour with Avril Lavigne, who's a Canadian singer-songwriter. So all in all, our family resume looked really good on paper, and I had Facebook to prove it. Anyway, then January 31st, 2020, my husband asked for a divorce, seemingly from out of the blue. And all those pillars that had supported my validation, happy family, social status, financial standing, all of it crumbled in this heap of rubble, and I had nowhere to go. Because at the time, we'd been living in a luxury apartment over our little outdoor store and coffee shop in a building that was owned by my mother-in-law, so staying there was not an option. So I figured, well, maybe we can go stay with my parents for a little while. The kids and I can figure out, what we're going to do next. And a few weeks after my husband asked for a divorce, my mom called to let me know that my dad had been diagnosed with cancer. It was the height of the pandemic, and he was going to be starting chemo treatments, so staying with them was not an option. It would put his life at risk. So I borrowed $8,000 from my mom and dad, bought a pop-up trailer, and we hit the road. And at first we had no idea where to go, so we kind of gravitated towards places where we'd lived before, places where we knew people, northern Michigan and Colorado. And it was in Eagle, Colorado, that I think I hit rock bottom as it relates to this whole topic of validation. We used to live in Eagle, and at the time when we were living there, we were in this beautiful $1 million home up at the top of the hill. I was the president of the PTO, and so here we are back in Eagle, showing up at the same parties, and I'm going, with the same friends. I'm bringing the same bottled wine. I'm even wearing the same dress. But instead of living in the beautiful $1 million home at the top of the hill, I'm living in a pop-up trailer down by the river, in a Bureau of Land Management campground that just had a pet toilet. I'm literally bathing in the Eagle River, freezing cold river. And now the kids are no dummies. As soon as their friends offered them a place to stay, warm beds, hot meals, they're like, yeah, heck yeah. So they're out of there. But when my friends called and asked me if I wanted to stay with them, I said, oh, don't worry about it. I like the outdoors. I love fresh air, which is true. But that's not the real reason I declined their generous offer to stay. It was really because I was embarrassed. I felt like a phony, a fraud. I didn't have home, and I was ashamed. So, in an effort to kind of regain my sense of validation, I started a business. It's called Nomaditudes, and it was actually a really great idea. It was the world's first global dormitory. So I partnered with Selina, which is a high-end youth hostel chain, and brokered a deal where, for one flat monthly fee, we could stay at any Selina location. And it worked out really well. So then I went to college students and said, now listen, instead of taking your classes online in your parents' basement, come travel with me in Peru, or not Peru, sorry, in Costa Rica and in Mexico, and you can take all your classes online. And so that's what they did. And that provided the money for me to be able to travel with my children as well. So it was an amazing winter in South America, or Central America, in Mexico. But I didn't have exclusivity for more than 6 months. So as soon as that 6-month window expired, Selina rolled out their own program, which was actually heralded as one of the most innovative concepts in the hospitality industry. So, and all of that kind of eclipsed Nomaditudes. Now you might think that I would be bitter, but in honesty I wasn't, because the truth was that I understood that this was still another attempt at external validation. I was still measuring myself by somebody else's measuring stick. And if there's anything that I learned from the road trip, it was that what I truly value is my freedom. And if I'd started a business, I would lose that freedom. So in the end, my validation does not come from what I do for a living. My validation comes from who I am as a person. My validation does not come from my family's resume. My validation comes from the characteristics that I am cultivating that will contribute towards my personal eulogy someday. My validation does not come from the place where I live. It comes from my heart. Because validation is an inward journey. And this life is the playground where that journey finds outward expression. Escapebound is the story about how I finally stopped trying to convince other people to fall in love with me for who I'm not, and finally learned to love myself for who I am. I hope you get a chance to read the book.